Another successful landing. I'm actually suffering from extreme exhaustion to the 1,000-mile trip. You know, sweating my guts out in the heat of Florida, working on the house, trying to do a million things when I get back because there's only one person around here that does everything, and that's me. I'm actually suffering from extreme exhaustion. Feeling really, really tired. Interestingly enough, of course, I've been talking about vitamin C megadoses, not like taking, well, I took 1,000 milligrams, 2,000. So what? Earlier today, I mean, I was just bad. Earlier today, around about 11 a.m., I took a megadose, and just talking about me, not for you. I think I took about maybe 14 or 15 grams worth. Oh man, the reaction that my body had within like about 50 minutes, I mean, I was like 80% better. It's absolutely incredible. I mean, I'm still suffering from the exhaustion, but man, it's nothing like this morning. I get asked this question a lot, and I actually enjoy making videos about stuff, especially if there's no other videos on it on YouTube. And there are other videos on YouTube, like, what's the purpose of life? So there are other videos on this, but they're all completely intellectually laughable. You know, they're absurd, they're illogical, they're unintelligent, they're not thought out. And I keep getting asked this question all the time. It's like the really, really big question. Of course, I mean, necessitatively it is. And of course, people say this all the time in real life. You know, if they get discouraged about something, it's like, whoa, what's the purpose of life? You know, they get discouraged, they'll say that, and nobody has an answer because, of course, nobody knows. And we have to, of course, distinguish and differentiate out between purpose and intent, and I'm not interested in logomachy and lip flapping and talking about the denotative definition of intent versus purpose, but distinguish things and talk about free will specifically. And I have a list of 5 things that people have an intent on life, and I'll actually make an intelligent conclusion based upon not anything I've read from Iamblichus or Plato or Plotinus, but an intelligent answer. And you give me feedback. I read every comment on the purpose of life. Of course, willed purpose implies human beings have free will, but human beings don't have any free will unless it's actualized. You can't get, even though genetically identical, an acorn and an oak tree. You can't get any lumber out of an acorn. What is potential is not actual. Human beings do not have free will unless it is actualized. Many human beings are purely reactive. They act solely on impulse from the body. Just like a dog, for example. Of course, I know there are trained dogs that are well behaved and are not purely reactive, but I mean being bestial. So what is potential is not actual, and then we have to talk about purpose versus intent, but I'm going to make it really simple. Make this video very concise, actually. Purpose, of course, means reason, or reasons for existing, and we have to talk about purpose of body and purpose of spirit. And we talk about the fact that human beings are of a dual nature. Every branch of monistic metaphysics, Pythagorean, Platonic, Neoplatonic, Advaita Vedanta, original Buddhism, they all said the same thing. Human beings, of course, are of a dual nature. Bodily purpose, of course, merely the functioning, is the functionality to serve the purpose thereof of the mechanics of life, of which there is threefold: survival, evolution, and reproduction. Bodily purpose, of course, is bestial. It is material. Materialists, of course, for example, serve the purpose of the body. Things, gathering things, owning things, money, reproduction, materialistic acquisitions and pleasures, of course. But there are 5 different impulses that people will have, and there is some crossover, of course, of what is someone's intent in life. And then we'll talk about what life is, and then talk about the purpose of life in a generic sense when someone says, what's the purpose of life? So I will get to that here shortly. I'm not interested in making lists and being hyper-analytical, but actually getting to a genuine discussion that's both logical and intelligent and reflective of wisdom to whatever degree. Make your own conclusions in the comments, and I, of course, will read them. But why does life exist? That's a matter for another question. Consubstantiality in perfection, the harmony between matter and spirit, and talk about the dual nature of life itself. Death is not the opposite of life, rather the ending of life, and life, of course, is the consubstantiality of matter and spirit. That is what life is. The broadcast from the speaker of a radio, for example, is the consubstantiality of the signal and the radio. People think, well, the signal that's broadcast from the radio, for example, and the radio analogy that I use quite often, is the signal. Well, I am tuned into 88.9. I'm listening to true beats, rock and roll. It's like, well, you are, and that's the signal that you're actually tuned into, but the broadcast is the interpolation of the signal through analog digital processors and converters, and the chipset that's in the radio. It could be a tube radio, it could be a digital radio, but the broadcast is not the signal. A lot of people think that, and of course that's incorrect. So what's your intent in life? Really, there are only 5 different types of intent. Ultimately, there's 6. There is some crossovers. Intent, of course, being willed action upon or towards something, or the impulse that one has due to ignorance, and the desires, which of course the desire is the offshoot or the child of primordial ignorance or agnosis. And there are these 5. Gathering materials, money, houses, children, a sensualist, a materialistic life. So when someone says purpose of life, you have to be more specific and say, well, life does have a purpose, and it's bestial purpose, and life is a consubstantiality of matter and spirit, fundamentally at the bodily level. And of course an atheism is not profane for God or no God. We can leave all that God stuff out of it. True atheism, this is not my opinion, this is fact, it's called metaphysical atheism. It denies a substrate to phenomena, basically that there's no hand underneath the sock puppet. Kind of scratching my head because I sunburned my head in Florida working outside in the yard, so I'm scratching my head. Not that I have fleas or anything, because my head is sunburnt, healing from sunburn. Gathering material is essentialist in the materialistic life, so that's number 1. So when we say, what's your purpose? It's like, well, what is your intent in life? I mean, you have this life, you have this temporal bubble, which is what life is in the consubstantiality of matter and spirit, and fundamentally at that bodily level, we have only 3 things: survival, evolution, and reproduction. Getting back to metaphysical atheism, it denies the substrate to phenomena. These people will say, well, there's nothing other than the body. It's all about living the good life and having as little bit of pain as possible, and when you die, it's over with. Psh! It's like you've been flushed down the cosmic oblivion toilet, and that, of course, is completely ridiculous, and that's what metaphysical atheism is. These people think that ultimate purpose of life is strictly bodily purpose, survival, evolution, reproduction, the hoarding of things. So that's number 1. Number 2, reproduction. People, and this is the only reincarnation found in the Vedas and the Upanishads. And this is where you actually pass on your genes to your progeny. Where people want to have a family, and I'm not poo-pooing that at all. They want to have children, and my children are carrying on my name, and my genetics are in my children, so after I'm gone, I will carry on. And people confuse transmigration or polygenesis, or punabhavati in Pali, with this idea of reincarnation. So number 2 is reproduction and forwarding on, and that, of course, is once again serving the body. So people have these intents. We have to distinguish purpose from intent. Well, it's like, this life has this purpose, and life is a consubstantiality of matter and spirit, but I want to have my life have this intent. By the way, did you know that people that don't have a purpose in life suffer drastically? Aimless people that are like playing Xbox, and they kind of remind me of what's that movie played by Jeff Bridges, where the whole movie he's in a bathrobe, and he's got a beer in his hand or something. Everything is like, dude, oh dude, what is it again? The Big Lebowski. These people actually have much higher rates of heart disease, and they don't live as long. A long life is not important. Having a life that's full of purpose is important. All these people that are actually worried about living a long life, I find them extremely, extremely laughable. You know, they're afraid of death because they're full of ignorance, but that's a matter for another discussion. And, you know, they think the ultimate purpose of their life is to, and there are people like that. And I used to be super healthy, you know, do 500 sit-ups a day and ride my bike every day. And of course it's important to be healthy. You know, this is not a good state of being. I'm not praising being fat by any means. But these people that, you know, they spend every day like measuring every calorie and doing X amount of exercise, and their whole life really has no purpose other than to stay alive. Or not much beyond that. Unfortunately, number 3 would be exercising force upon others, people that have these intensive life. And this is a type of demonic materialism in another form, where you externalize possession, where you want control over other people. People that suffer this sick delusion, of course, like politicians and other warmongering types, they love and enjoy. Their whole intent in life, of course, is to exercise force upon others. Number 4 is like the Big Lebowski guy, for example, or some of these people will get Generation Y seems to emulate this the most. They just float through life like a turd flowing downstream. You know, they live and that's all they do. You know, they're like fungus that grows on, you know, the outside of your veranda. You know, they exist and not much else. It's the life of the dude. A beer and video games and working as little as possible. And if people want that for the intent of their life, so be it. Number 5 are people, you actually see this in monastics, and there's not a whole lot of these people in the world. There needs to be more, but ultimately it's not liberation and it's certainly not wisdom. People that emulate the one, what the good is also too what the good does, i.e. to do good. And I'm certainly not against it. It's good to be good and to emulate the attribute of the one. They're good towards others, and they lead a pure and simple life. We could talk about the Amish, for example, or clergy, certain, you know, at least the pure ones anyway. We all know what the Vatican and the other people have done. I'm not calling these people pure, but some of these monastics actually lead simple lives where they actually enjoy having the intent of their life be an emulation and a mimic of the extrinsic attribute of the one, i.e. the good, to do good and to do good upon others. And of course that is absolutely noble. And I'll actually get to the genuine purpose of life here in just a second. You can agree or disagree. Number 6 is the ultimate intent of life, which human beings unfortunately keep referring to as the purpose of life. And this is, of course, that life is a temporal bubble. Time does not exist at all. Time is a measure of mass and magnitude. These people use life to see past life itself, because they understand life is a temporal construct. Anything has a beginning of time, has an end of time. Life, of course, is a use-function temporal bubble to come to, or not come to, realization as to the nature of ultimate reality and what is under it, what is beyond it, what is above it, what is superior to it, the transcendence that is effectuated by the removal, using that temporal bubble, which is the life that we are given. And of course that temporal bubble, such that it has a beginning in time, has an end in time. We only have, as the saying goes, I think from some movie, it says, you know, you're given this time, what are you going to do with this time? Doesn't matter how rich you are or how poor you are, and of course you could die young, you could die old. What are you going to do with the time that you're given? You know, you can fritter it away collecting all this crap, you know, which you're not going to take with you. You're not going to take it with you in the afterlife like the ancient Egyptians thought. You know, bury you with all this gold stuff and garbage. You know, you're going to take it with you. What are you going to do with it? So, number 6 is understanding that use-function temporal bubble that is life, and come to the understanding nature of reality and what is above, beyond, and transcendent to it, and what would be the methodology to effectuate that. Well, embodiment is due to primordial agnosis. And of course people suffer in life for many reasons. You know, there's physical suffering, and of course there's ultimate suffering, which perpetuates existence after existence, i.e. embodiment, and this is due to primordial agnosis. People suffer due to and it's an identification phenomenology. They identify with that which they see in the mirror. In the bathroom, they think they are the psychophysical creature, the persona non grata, Bob, Sue, Larry, whatever the person is, and you know, they suffer as a result of the fact that, That thing has a beginning in time and an end in time, and you're not going to, doesn't matter how healthy you are, or even if you live to be 200 years old, it's not yours. The most repeated phrase in ancient Pali is Isakaya Namisata. The body is not that which you truly are, as in the phrase has met Tattvamasi, or that thou art, with a capital T, meaning that as the transcendent principle. So there's a purpose of spirit. So there's a bodily purpose, which is the purpose of life. Yes, and we could be highly analytical, but we're only talking about bodily purpose once again: survival, evolution, and reproduction. There is a purpose of spirit, but people don't engage it. Unfortunately, they're too concerned with gathering materials. They're sensualists. They're interested solely in reproduction and making a family, exercising force upon others. There's, of course, a whole mix there of all of that. The purpose of spirit, of course, would be wisdom, transcendence, THEURGY, that which is possible given this temporal bubble that is, of course, coordinate to this existential life itself. All human beings, as parroted by all forms of monistic monism, Platonism, Neoplatonism, the Pitaphesian, John the Scot, Erigena, on and on and on. They all say the same thing, that human beings are of two types, and there's two selves, of course. You're supposed to disidentify with the self that most people think they are, which is that thing you see in the mirror in your bathroom, and identify with and disobjectify with that lower self. Because humans are of course, two worlds. Life, by definition, is this consubstantiality of matter and spirit. It's, of course, wise to take care of both. And, I fail because I'm fat and out of shape, I don't exercise enough. I know my faults, obviously so. But to know ultimately, which one is the goal for ultimate reality and what to disobjectify with, which you are identifying with and as well as most other people in this world, due to that primordial agnosis, which causes you suffering. Anybody that, of course, is born must necessitatively, there's that great word, necessitatively, anake, as the Greek said, get sick and suffer and die. There's no escape from that. No form of metaphysics teaches the end of physical suffering or death, only the final cutting off of same. So when we talk about the purpose of life, we have to then say, what is someone's intent in life, and how do they choose to spend that temporal bubble that they have, which is, you fill a balloon up with air, and you slowly let the air out, and it makes that little wheezing sound, and you see the bubble shrinking. That's basically what we have as far as this temporal bubble. That temporal bubble, of course, is the expression of life, that consubstantiality of both. They're working in harmony as long as life lasts, and you either choose to use it wisely or you don't, or you choose to express it with the wrong intent, worrying about gathering stuff. It's never yours. Of course, you need stuff to survive, and if you want to serve the body, it's like, well, I need food, clothing, and shelter. I need money to pay the bills so I can survive, and, a species can propagate and evolve. Ultimately, I won't be around to see the evolution. I also need that to reproduce. I need to feed my children, feed the family, put a roof over our head. People say, well, that's the purpose of life. Lead a good life and have a great family. And superficially, that is noble, but it is not even close or even remotely close to a noble life. There's a good life, there's a bad life, and then there's a noble life. And people say, what's the purpose of life? It's like, well, I could tell you, you probably wouldn't agree. The bodily purpose of life is solely for survival, evolution, and reproduction. But that is not what human beings are. It is partially, but every human being is of two natures. And you have to serve both. If you don't take care of the bodily, you're going to die soon. Be like me, you're out of shape, I could drop dead tomorrow, who knows, right? But you have to serve both. While alive, you should eat well and take care of yourself. That would be the bodily purpose of life. But ultimately realize you are not that body, and to engage in theurgy, to engage in disobjectification, to work on transcendence such that it is not a perpetual cycle. There's that neat little word called samsara, meaning samsarati, which means to go round and round and round and round. So you could keep running around that rat cage in perpetuity, for countless eons. Keep serving the body. So, when someone says, what's the purpose of life? It's like, well, first you need to understand that life is of a dual nature, body and spirit. To lead the most wholesome life possible, which is extremely rare, you have to take care of one and you need to concentrate on the other. And almost nobody does that. I mean, look at me. I'm in bad shape. I do concentrate a lot on one. I used to do tons of exercise. I really burned myself out really bad on exercise. I mean, 500 or 600 sit-ups a day. But I need to concentrate on that. I mean, I know my failures on that point, so. But that really is the short version to the question, what is the purpose of life? And I'm 100% certain that of all the YouTube videos out there that talk about what's the purpose of life, that I have bested them all. Not in my own mind, I know I bested them. This is a block of beeswax that I picked up from my beekeeper down in Florida. When I was down there, I bought 2 gallons of honey. No, I know I shouldn't be eating honey. I bought it because honey's the only food on earth that never ever goes bad. I got it in my basement as like emergency food. Honey is better, raw honey is better than Neosporin for cuts. It also, too, purifies dirty water of bacteria. It does take a few days. Honey has like a million uses. It's orange blossom honey. I get it from Walker Farm Honey, but I also have a lot of uses for beeswax, so I should have picked up a bigger brick of beeswax. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to contact me, my email's in the description below, or any donation too. Or tell me how much you hated it. I do read every comment, so tell me what you think. And I have to apologize for like scratching my neck and my head, but like I said, I got really bad sunburned in Florida because I was out working outside on the house. Should I put on sunscreen? Yes, I should have, but I was too busy concentrating on the house. That was my failing. Thank you so much for watching. Goodbye, and have a lovely weekend. Man, that vitamin C really picked me up. I mean, it was like supercharging me because I was really, 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 really exhausted this morning. Took a mega dose of vitamin C. It was like, wow, Shazam! Yee! I'm serious. I'm not joking. Thank you. Goodbye.